Well, week 2 fantasy football is finally upon us. The big weekend, that is. And you guys, some of you guys know that I say all the time, every day in football, when we actually get to the season, is basically like a year. It is moving so fast. It's like Ferris Bueller said, life moves pretty fast. And especially life in football moves really fast. So I'm going to go through some injury reports, some injuries that you need to know, to kind of explain to you guys and show you how fast things move. Christian McCaffrey goes to the IR. Obviously, that's a massive issue when you're talking about your fantasy team, and probably anybody who has Christian McCaffrey is dealing with a massive problem right now, trying to know where to go from here. So that's one. Kenneth Walker is doubtful for this game. He's not playing, which means that Zach Charbonnet is ultimately going to play in this game. There's a couple more. Jaden Reed is going to play. Looks like Keenan Allen's a game time call. I don't think A.J. Brown is going to play. Jordan Love is obviously not going to play. Those are some of the bigger ones that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm going through the injury report right now just to make sure that I've got everything. Jake Ferguson, he's doubtful. He's not going to play. Yeah, I think those are some of the major ones that I just went through. So, point being, football moves fast. Every day is like a year. That's why I try to get the must start and sit videos in on Saturdays, because I know how much things change throughout the week. So there needs to be updates from the rankings that come out Tuesday, Wednesday on my channel. They need to go out on Saturday, do the must start and sits to address changes that inevitably happen. They just do. They inevitably happen. So football moves fast. It's like Ferris Bueller said. So to counteract that, we're going live again before week 2 fantasy football. Make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, and we're going to get into all your questions today. Nathaniel and Scott, good morning to you guys as well. Good morning to everybody here. I appreciate you joining me today. JT Blue Gobs, what's going on? Drop Palmer and pick up Johnston. Not playing either, but who is a better stash? I think Johnston is the better stash. I think that I've said this for a while. Josh Palmer, I actually said he was kind of a must pick up before the start of the season, because it looked like he was going to get yet another opportunity to be their wide receiver 1. And I think he did get that opportunity. He ended up getting ejected from that game. So it's not like it was all because he was bad, but this dude has had years with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both missing time over the last 2 years specifically, for him to come out and show that he's worthy to be a wide receiver 1 on a team. This dude can't do it. So, you know, he's just, we know what he is. And the reality with Quentin Johnston, guys, and if you were with my channel before last year, when I had like 2,000 subscribers or something like that, I was not big on Quentin Johnston. I thought he was being overdrafted. I thought he was being trusted way too much last year in drafts. And I said, if he breaks out and if it works, it's going to be after year 1. Because it's not going to happen year 1. This dude is not ready. And coaching has a lot to do with it. This past week, Quentin Johnston was being used as he should have been throughout the duration of his rookie year. I mean, they knew what to do with him. It looks like they have him figured out. So he looked a lot better last week than he did at all last year. And he left such a bad taste in people's mouths last year based on what he did that everybody's just like, I'm out. I'm out on this guy. He sucks. And it's like, I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, this guy still does have first-round capital. They're going to try to make him work. Josh Palmer, we know what he is. So I would personally rather keep Quentin Johnston, especially since, I mean, you're not planning on starting either. You're just looking for a stash. That's the better stash in my opinion. Quentin Johnston, I think, is a rising stock. And, you know, like I said, people have bad taste in their mouth from him just because of last year and what he did as a rookie. And people drafted him way too high last year. So I think that he's the better stash. Joe Brasha, Football Sunday, let's go. Good morning. Good morning to everybody in here. We're all just ready for football, man. I can't wait. I cannot wait. Scott H, what's going on? I'm in a bind between DK or Ladd McConkey in my flex spot. It's a PPR league. Okay. So Ladd McConkey, as some of you may know, I've been saying throughout the week, he's been really close, for me personally, to being inside that top 30 tier. Like, he was really close, and he was my underdog pick of the week. So if you want to play underdog, a best ball draft for the week, I think Ladd McConkey is a pretty good upside play. Because what I think is going to happen, personally, is the Chargers are going to run it down their throat. But what I also think could happen is that Ladd McConkey gets tons of receptions right out of the gate and maybe a touchdown. So I think he has upside. Like, I do believe that there is upside with Ladd McConkey. Ultimately, it comes down to DK and if he can hit a big play. Because I've been saying it, the Patriots' defense is not weak. It's not a weak defense. Like, their defense is the strength of their team. It's definitely not their offense, that's for sure. But really with DK, it comes down to if he hits a big play. I like the potential for it. I've actually shifted around my rankings, and Ladd has actually surpassed him. I would go with Ladd, personally, because I think there's just more volume, I think, that's going to be there for Ladd than there will be for DK. Because DK, I mean, like I said, he's gone downhill the last several years in fantasy football. And also, he's just not, like, he's not as, like, he doesn't have a monopoly on the target share. I think Ladd is sort of heading towards that. I think he's heading towards it. So I would go with Ladd over DK. I would. Chaludo88X, what's going on? Pickens, Lazard, or Singletary for the flex? Yeah, I think that Lazard is the play. Look, with Pickens, the problem I have with him this week is that he's going against Pat Surtain, the same corner who made DK Metcalf irrelevant last week. Most people would not say that that Pickens is a better player than DK. Most people would not say that. Now, I would personally make the argument, I think it's possible, but most people would not agree with me, and that's fine. DK has a longer track record, but the point being, he got shut down by a better corner than he is. Pickens has a worse quarterback than Metcalf does and may not be better. I don't like the matchup against Pat Surtain. It's a low-scoring game, and it's going to be an ugly game. I don't think there's much upside with Pickens this week. Singletary, I don't think there's much upside ever. I don't think there is. So, for me, Lazard is the play. Because what we have to remember about Lazard and what he did last week is that some of his production did come in quote-unquote garbage time. Like, they weren't out of it just yet. But one of the touchdowns he caught was on free play, and he did, I think, end up leading the team in targets. But there's definitely, I don't think that you're going to see a consistent level of that from Lazard. This week, I like him because L'Jarius Sneed will be on Garrett Wilson. That's going to be Wilson's problem to deal with. Now, that's going to leave Lazard open for opportunities because their cornerback 2 is not as good as their corner 1. So I think that Lazard will have opportunities, and really there's a trust factor there with Rodgers. I mean, with Rodgers and Lazard, Green Bay guys, Rodgers has consistently brought somebody else with him. When he went to the Jets, he brought Lazard, he brought Randall Cobb, he brought Nathaniel Hackett. He brings his guys. And it showed that Lazard was an important target last week. So I think the matchup is there with him. I think Lazard is a better play than all those guys. JT Blue Gobs, every time I see Football Fanalysts Network notifications, I smile. I smile whenever I get to go live with all you guys. And because I love going live, especially. It's fun. Just interacting with everybody. It's pretty sweet, man. Football just makes me happy. That's really my life. It's just football. Hulk Smash Yo Mom. I love the name. It's a great name. Zach Charbonnet or Robinson Jr. half PPR? This is a good question. I haven't been asked this one yet. This is kind of close to the area where I've ranked Charbonnet. Charbonnet is in position where I think he is going to be monopolizing the backfield. Now, whether or not that's a good thing, like in this particular week, we'll find out. I mean, it's never a bad thing to monopolize the backfield. I'm saying matchup-wise. I'm not convinced this is a clean, good matchup. Because, I mean, the Patriots defense, as I've been saying, they're not bad. This is not a bad defense. They're run by a defensive coach, former defensive player for Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo. Very good player. So I tend to believe he knows what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball. And based on last week, I think he does. The problem is their offense. It's not their defense. So Charbonnet, I think, could be rendered pretty inefficient this week. So even if he does get 16 carries and maybe 2 or 3 targets, I don't think it's going to be very efficient. Now, 16 carries probably equates to, I mean, if you're getting 3 yards per carry on 6 carries, you're looking at 48 yards, right? So it's like you'll look around like 50 to 65 yards if you're inefficient. And whether or not he gets in the end zone remains to be seen. With Brian Robinson Jr., I think that as the weeks go on, we're going to start seeing him be discussed in similar areas as guys like he'll be around like top 15 area pretty consistently. Because I think it's there for him this year, man. Like, Brian Robinson Jr. is going to lead the team in carries. Based on last week, he may get more reception work than I thought he would with a running quarterback. But the ultimate difference maker is that with Jaden Daniels, there's 2 good things. Number 1, he's going to be more efficient this year because of the running quarterback. Basically meaning defenses can't stack the box in preparation for a Brian Robinson run because they have to respect Jaden's legs. And especially based on week 1, defenses are picking up on that immediately. Number 2, Jaden Daniels is not the type of quarterback that's going to run it into the goal line. He's too small. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Jalen Hurts. They're not doing that. It's Lamar Jackson similar, where there's going to be a lot of red zone opportunities for the running back. And if that's Brian Robinson Jr., which we have every reason to believe it is, Brian Robinson's better play. Brian Robinson against the Giants, I think, is just it's not a great matchup, but it's definitely not a bad matchup. It's a better matchup that I trust more than the Seattle one. So I would go with Brian Robinson Jr. myself. And again, appreciate the super chat, Hulk Smash Him Mom. That's such a good name. Mike Kelly, what's going on? Full PPR, choose 2. Gibbs, Jordan Mason, Mike Evans. Oh, man, you got good problems, man. You got good problems. That's a good thing. It's good to have good problems because you really can't go wrong. I mean, obviously, one of any of these guys, if not all of them, can bust. But the premise, you can't really go wrong. Like, Jordan Mason, I've been saying 95% of the time, like, you need to find a way to get him in your lineup. And if you ask me, I'll find a way. I would go with Mason for sure, and I probably would bench Mike Evans. This Mike Evans situation, like, I love Evans. Like, he just continues to prove everybody and me to a certain extent wrong. Because he's making a Hall of Fame career right now. That's the reality with Mike Evans. He's building up his Hall of Fame resume. And he's doing a great job at it. Gibbs and Mason are probably my picks. Because the thing I like about Gibbs is that this is going to be a matchup where Detroit wins. The line, I think the line on points of the Lions-Bucks game, last time I checked, was like 48, 46, something like that. And the spread was like 6.5, 7 points in favor of the Lions. So, like, Vegas expects the Lions to win pretty comfortably. If that's the case, and I believe the same thing, because the Lions, like last year, it was competitive for the first half, and then Detroit just kind of pulled away and wore down the defense. I think it'll go similar to that last year because, and I think if that happens, which I expect it to happen, Gibbs is in a good position where he'll get a bunch of work. I think Gibbs and Montgomery are great plays this week. Now, Gibbs is always someone I'm going to prefer over Montgomery because he's going to get the reception work, and he's just more prone to explosion plays than Montgomery is. Now, with Jordan Mason over Mike Evans, the decision comes down to the fact that I believe Jordan Mason will be more efficient. If not more efficient, I think it'll be very similar to last week. I do. I think it's going to be a very similar game script because the Minnesota Vikings have a pretty decent defense as well. Very similar to the Jets. It's not a bad defense. But the thing with the Vikings is that their offense isn't going to be able to get much going, I don't think. I think it's going to be a bad day for Sam Darnold. I really do, because Sam Darnold was a 49er last year. They know his tendencies, they know his strengths, and more importantly, they know his weaknesses. So I think the Vikings are going to struggle to get anything going offensively, leaving their defense on the field a bunch. And that's what happened to the Jets last week. That's exactly what happened to the Jets. So I think that, I think that Jordan Mason is in really good shape again. So I would play him over Evans. But again, you got good problems, man. You got good problems. Go with your gut if you're not following what I'm saying. But I pretty confidently am saying Gibbs and Jordan Mason out of this group. Miggy's 909. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Wanted to ask, I'm starting Rice, but not sure who to start. Neighbors, Collins, Marvin Harris Jr., or Drake London. Well, Nico, I cannot rightfully tell you guys to sit Nico. I think Nico's going to be very consistent this year. Like, I think that Nico is going to be a really consistent play. Nico is the best weapon in an offense with just a great quarterback. CJ Stroud, it's time for people to see him as what he is, which is a great player. And I think most people are there. Like, most people have already crowned him kind of as an elite quarterback in this league. So I think that personally, as much as I want to play Neighbors, I can't play him over Nico. It's just not there for me this week, personally. Now, Nico is a good play that I do try to get in lineups this week. Anytime someone asks me, I would probably, a lot of times this week, try to get him in, but not over Nico. I mean, for me, like, I have the combination of Rice and Nico starting in a bunch of leagues myself. So I'm telling you exactly what I am doing personally. So, yeah, I can't rightfully say that you could play Nico, that you can sit Nico in favor of Malik Neighbors. That's just where I'm at personally. Appreciate the super chat. Jessica Lauren, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 flex. Have Lamb, Rice, Debo, and Nico. Then Jacobs, Taylor, Connor, and Dobbins. Starting Lamb, Rice, Jacobs, and Taylor, and leaning Debo. Thoughts? So you're starting Lamb, Rice, Jacobs, and Taylor. I mean, again, good problems. You've got good problems here for sure. You're definitely not in bad shape either way. I think that Nico and Debo are so close for me They're really close. And this is, again, the reason I love Debo so much right now is because I believe in order of importance to the offense. I think it goes Christian McCaffrey and Debo when they're both healthy. Now, based on last week, like, you can interpret Jordan Mason is going to fill the importance that McCaffrey left. And I wouldn't really argue with you on it because the reality with Kyle Shanahan is that he does love to run the ball with one running back. Like, that's his thing. He's not about the committee backfield. He had to do it for a couple years before he got McCaffrey. Didn't love it. So he was like, I want an all-star. So I think that Jordan Mason will continue to be the guy. But I also personally believe that Debo is going to be a nightmare in fantasy football. Both for you sometimes and for the opponent. Because more so for the opponent, because I do believe that Debo is going to have a really good run to begin the year. Now, of course, he's not exactly the healthiest guy who has been consistently healthy over his career. So there is that factor of it. And when we get to the top here, I'm splitting hairs. You have to understand that. So for me personally, like, Nico is so hard to bench. And even Connor and Dobbins are hard to bench, but it's definitely between Nico and Debo. For me this week, I would probably go with Debo because I like the matchup better. And again, I think that both of them are going to have plenty of opportunities. That's not the problem. Really, the problem comes down to whether or not Nico is a little bit stopped, I guess, versus the Bears defense. I think that's the one thing that I could think of as a possibility. So yeah, I would go with Debo in this game. Appreciate the super chat, Jessica Lauren. Joseph the Andal. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Need to replace Love. Malik Willis or Minshew? Ooh. Eeh. Uh-oh. Ooh. Yeah. Bonus points for anybody who can get that movie reference. Just terrific. Oh, man, that's brutal. Definitely not Malik Willis. I literally have zero confidence in Malik Willis as an NFL quarterback. I mean, this dude, I think I was looking at his, seasons, not his season, his entire career stats the other day, and I think he's thrown more picks than touchdowns. Let me pull it up right now. I'm going to pull up Malik Willis's all-time stats for you guys in the NFL. This is a brutal question, man. I will tell you this. His entire career, Malik Willis is 35 for 67, giving him a 52% completion percentage, zero touchdowns and 3 interceptions. That means that he throws an interception every 10.5 throws. Oh my gosh, it is so bad. So at least I'm hard on Minshew, but at least we know he has a place in the league. I think he's a better backup. But I also do believe that he belongs in the league at some place. So I cannot tell you to start Malik Willis. It's a brutal situation. I think they both are in bad situations. Malik Willis actually probably has the better matchup than Gardner Minshew, but Malik Willis, man, I can never tell anybody to play Malik Willis. I would play literally every quarterback in the league over Malik Willis this week. Literally every last one of them. I would play Bo Nix over him. I would play, no doubt, Caleb. I would definitely play Sam Darnold. I would play Darnold over him because I know that Darnold, again, has a place in the league. Malik Willis, I've got no confidence in. And if he does well, by some fluke, good for him. It's not going to be on any of my teams, and I wouldn't recommend it's on any of yours. So I would go with Minshew in this matchup. But it's a tough one. Appreciate the super chat, though. Nicodemus, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. Start one. Justin Jefferson, Harrison Jr., or Dell. Yeah, man. I really see this. The thing about this question is that I would like. I've been saying it throughout the week. I think this is not going to be Justin Jefferson's best game. I think that this matchup against the 49ers again, Darnold is going to suffer. Darnold is not going to be as good because I think this defense knows exactly what he can and can't do. They spent a year with him last year, and they liked him over there. But they also know his weaknesses. And I said it before week 1, you can kind of basically pencil in an ugly interception for him every single week. Last week he had one. This week I think we're trying 3. I mean, honestly, I think he could throw 3 picks in this game. That being said, I can't tell you to sit him because Jefferson is so elite that, and with Jordan Addison out and Hawkinson obviously not there, I mean, he may very well get 10 targets in this game. Not just 10. He may very well get like 15. So I can't tell you to sit 15 targets, man. Like, I do believe it's very possible because they're going to lose this game. And it's not going to be particularly, I think by halftime or at the latest, I think by the mid-third quarter, the 49ers have a pretty comfy grasp on this game. So I would probably say you got to play Jefferson. I would not consider playing Marv this week over Jefferson. Because Jefferson is just in his own tier. Not in his own tier, but between these 3 guys, yes. And then Tank Dell, I would play Tank Dell before I played Marvin this week probably. But again, neither of them are close to Jefferson. But I understand people's concern, and I'm assuming that you're asking that question because you do have a concern. And I am totally there with you, but these guys, I can't tell you to play them. Appreciate the super chat, though. Brad McCoy, what's going on? Start Ford versus Jacksonville or Charbonnet versus New England. They're literally right there with each other. I mean, these 2 guys are literally right there neck and neck for me. I think that Ford is in a great matchup, and I think that Sharp is in a potentially good matchup, but unlikely to be so. I think Charbonnet will monopolize the backfield. And I think that Ford obviously has a monopoly on the backfield. The problem that I have with Ford, and I've told people this week, I know some people were not happy about my Ford ranking this week, said I was sleeping on him. Listen, you may very well be right. But I'll tell you my reasoning for it is because with Ford, he's in an offense that's led by Deshaun friggin' Watson. And if you took out that garbage touchdown last week from Ford, it wasn't a very good week. So I get it. That's the Cowboys defense. They're going up against the Jags defense this week. But Deshaun Watson, he is so freaking bad that I have no confidence in this offense for much of anything. That being said, I remember watching Zach Charbonnet last year, and last year Zach Charbonnet was not great in his couple of opportunities where he monopolized the backfield when Kenneth Walker was out. He didn't look very good. Now, obviously, he's not a rookie anymore, so it could change. These guys are so close for me. That's why they're literally right back to each other. I have Ford ranked 1 spot over Charbonnet right now. So I would lead Ford this week because I know what I'm getting in Ford and I know the matchup is better. But go with if you're not buying what I'm saying, totally fine, go with your gut because these guys literally are back to back in my rankings. Garrison, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Prescott or Goff? Hung up on quarterback this week. I think this is going to be a really good week for Goff. I really do. And I think it'll be a better week for Dak too. Because they're at home. Again, I mean, the Saints are a good defense too. Like, there's no question. Dak was not great in fantasy last week at the Browns. I think that could change for sure. I think that with Jared Goff this week, though, I think he's going to be really good. I mean, the thing with Jared Goff is that if you saw what he did last year in that playoff game, he was almost lights out. And they're taking on that same Bucs defense, which is, I mean, it's a good defense, but the problem is if you look at the Vegas line on this one, it's like, I think the over-under is like 48 points, but the spread on this game is in favor of Detroit by like 6 or 6.5, 7 points. I mean, it's a pretty decent swing towards the Lions this week. And let me make a quick check because I think that Jameson Williams, I know he's obviously questionable. This could impact it a little bit for me. He's expected to play against the Bucs today. So, yeah, I kind of figured he would because it was the same ankle from last week. But I just wanted to make sure, yeah, I think I'm going to go with Goff. I think Goff is really good this week against the Bucs defense. They just kind of know how to beat him. And with Dak, I just think that Dak is going up against a tougher defense again for the second straight week. Dak is going to have good games. I think Goff is a better one in this one. Appreciate the super chat, though. Wyatt Agualo is up next. What's going on? Amari Cooper or Calvin Ridley? Mark Andrews or Likely? All right, we'll go one at a time on this one. So, Cooper and Ridley are basically, they are in the same tier for me this week. You know, with Ridley, the problem that he has is that he's going up against Sauce Gardner. The problem with Cooper is that he's being thrown the ball by Deshaun Watson. I mean, Calvin Ridley doesn't have a great situation either because of Will Levis. But when I add up the problems, Amari Cooper's matchup is going to be a lot better. Against the Jags defense, I don't trust any corner. And really, the problem last week was exclusively Deshaun Watson. He had 9 targets last week, Amari Cooper. Calvin Ridley did not have 9 targets. And I'm not saying that he can't get to that, but without Njoku now, I think there will be even more emphasis. Jerry Jeudy's irrelevant to me, and Elijah Moore's not doing it. So Amari, I mean, he could easily get like 12 to 13 targets today. I have a hard time sitting that. And Amari is a good player, and the offensive coach with not Kevin O'Connell. Why am I blanking on the Browns coach name? Stefanski. Stefanski, I think, is going to find a way to get Amari the ball because Amari is just too good for them. So I would say that Amari is the better play over Ridley this week. And Andrews are Likely. Yeah, these guys are they're literally back-to-back for me. I'm going Andrews this week personally. If given the option between the two, and I'm not facing this option anywhere, if I was facing the option, I would go Andrews. The reason why is because Andrews was out there, and he wasn't always out there, but when he was out there, he was running routes. Now, I think, personally, he will have a rebound week, and I think this is the matchup to do it. Now, if we have another week of Likely being a better asset for the Ravens offense than Mark Andrews, we're talking serious about Mark Andrews and what his upside is moving forward and if you should be looking to trade him. I think this week, stick to your guns on Andrews because you drafted him high and play him and see how it goes this week because I really do think this is a good rebound game for Mark Andrews personally. Delirious, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. PPR, start 1. Jacobs, Dobbins. Trade Pitts for Bowers. So I'm going to go with, man, it's close, man. Earlier yesterday, I got the same question about Jacobs or Dobbins. And I said I would go with Dobbins. These guys are so close to me. Because essentially, there's 2 ways you can think about this one in particular. With Josh Jacobs, you're getting I think he legitimately has a chance to get 30 opportunities today. I legitimately think that's in the cards for him. Now, they're not all going to be good opportunities because if the Colts don't know already, they'll figure it out throughout the game. They can stack the freaking box against Josh Jacobs to make sure he doesn't beat them and make Malik Willis throw the ball. If they don't know it by now, they'll figure it out by like end of the first quarter. So Josh Jacobs is going to have a tough go this week. That said, I believe he gets close to 30 opportunities. I think it's legitimately possible. Now, Marshawn Lloyd, take this however you want to. Apparently, he's making his debut today. I don't think much about that. Like that literally doesn't affect me. This dude's a rookie, mid-round pick, and didn't do anything in the offseason. I don't see him taking a legitimate workload from Jacobs in this game. Now, with Dobbins, like, I believe that they're going to run it down the Panthers' throat today. And I also believe if there's if there's 30 carries that are available for running backs against the Panthers today, I think it's going to be 19 or so for JK and like 11 or so for Gus Edwards. Because they were basically even split last week, but there was a clear difference of who the better running back was and who did more with their opportunities. So Dobbins with the better matchup and not I think he'll have a healthy workload today. Maybe not 30 opportunities like I think is coming for Jacobs, but they're more quality carries because he's taking on the friggin' Panthers. So I would personally go with Dobbins this week. I would go with Dobbins. And trade Pitts for Bowers. Honestly, man, I don't think I would unless I was getting like a legitimate starting flex option in return. Like with Pitts, I get it. Pitts is so scary. Like he's disappointed us all in fantasy. But I think that Bowers, like just being a rookie, and like, listen, Bowers was really involved last week. Like immediately, and I mean, he's ranked in my rankings this week, high as he is, for a reason. So I think that Bowers really does have a lot of upside in this offense, but I also do think that it could be taken away at any moment, and not exactly that. My concern more so lies to the matchup this week. The matchup against the Ravens, I think they're going to just get crushed today. And I think that Pitts and the Falcons lose today too. This is obviously not a week 2 question though. This is about season long. I think the spirit of the Raiders gets crushed faster than the spirit of the Falcons. So I just tend to believe that Pitts has more upside season long than Bowers personally. Because the good thing with them is if Kirk sucks now, they can just bench him and put in Penix, who looks really good too. So with the Raiders, you're picking your poison between O'Connell and friggin' Minshew. So it's like, pick your poison, man. So I think the only way that I would do this trade is if I got a legitimate flex play in return, like somebody in the range of like Zay Flowers, especially since you're in a PPR league, or somebody like I would say Godwin, but I think he's more valuable now to most people, not to me. But I think the only way I would do it is if I got a legitimate flex play. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we had Bruce Cowdery. What's going on? By the way, guys, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And check out Get In. It's your last chance to get in on the free CeeDee Lamb line. More than half a yard today against the Saints. That's Underdog's line right now, so use the link in the description and use code FN. Deposit $10 at least. They'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Just check it out. If you haven't taken advantage of it yet, take advantage of it now. Full PPR flex. Demarcus Robinson or Wan'Dale Moore? I'm assuming you're saying Wan'Dale Robinson. Because, I mean, Rondale Moore is on IR. Rondale Moore is not playing. So I'm assuming that that's what you're saying. Rondale Moore is, I mean, he's done. So I'm going to operate in the assumption you meant Wan'Dale Robinson. If that's the case, I'm personally going Wan'Dale Robinson. I am, because Wan'Dale, the good thing about Wan'Dale is that in a full PPR league, I think there's a legitimate chance that he has 6 or 7 catches today. So that's 6 or 7 points right out of the gate. And he may very well not get many yards with him. Like, he may very well get, like, 6 catches for, like, 36 yards, right? And no touchdowns. Like, he may very well get 7 catches for 44. But the good thing about it in a full PPR is that you're getting 6 or 7 right out of the gate because he's catching the ball. I think that I've made it clear this week, I'm not convinced that Demarcus Robinson, I actually believe Tyler Johnson is the better play for the Los Angeles Rams. I do. I think that Los Angeles, last week based on their matchup, Tyler Johnson was the better player. And I also think that it's going to be a situation that I could see a very similar type of deal this week with Tyler Johnson versus Demarcus Robinson. So I think that, I personally think that Wan'Dale Robinson's the better play because I think that his targets are going to be there. Whereas Robinson, like, I don't trust that he's getting like a legitimate good amount of targets when there's Tyler Johnson. That's just me personally. So I would go with Wan'Dale Robinson. Appreciate the super chat. Hoy and Vlog, what's going on? McLaurin or Brian Thomas Jr.? Stafford or Mayfield? Half PPR. I would go with Brian Thomas Jr. over McLaurin. That's a personal call for me. I think that Brian Thomas Jr. is in line for work. I mean, like, Brian Thomas Jr., like, he's going to be involved, and he'll get more involved as the weeks go. I mean, he was in on, like, 80% of the snaps last week, which is a good thing for him because, like, he's going to need to be in on a lot of snaps because I have made this clear. I don't think that Brian Thomas Jr. is a legitimate, like, threat over the middle of the field because he's not a route runner yet. He still needs polish, in my opinion. So I think personally that that Terry McLaurin, the problem I have with McLaurin is that McLaurin needs to be like a target guy if he's going to get anything going. Like, because McLaurin last week, it was like, I am so scared of McLaurin right now. So I think Brian Thomas Jr., based on the work he got last week, I would play him over McLaurin this week. And then Stafford or Mayfield, I actually dealt with this myself in my Dynasty League when I was looking who to pick up. When Jordan Love went down. Jordan Love is one of my Dynasty League quarterbacks. So I'm in a same boat as you are. And I'll tell you the reason I went with the reason I went with Baker is because I think long term, like in a couple weeks, he'll end up being the better option. I think that he'll end up being the better option between the two. Now, this week, I picked Stafford. The reason why is because I think Stafford against the Cardinals has historically been pretty strong. And also, the Stafford situation is that against the Cardinals, it's obviously a big factor. But with Baker, he is not, like last year, he struggled against the Lions. He did. And so I do believe that this is a good opportunity for Stafford. Whereas with Baker, I don't think it's a great opportunity. But again, long term, I picked Baker in a dynasty over Stafford because I'm missing Jordan Love for at least the next few weeks. So I think long term Mayfield, but I think today Stafford's the better play. Appreciate the super chat. Nate Dogg, what's going on, my man? Likely over Reed? Oh, man. I know you've been asking me a lot of Reed questions today. Not just today. You've been asking me a lot of Reed questions. I'm all here for it, man. I'm all here for it. I think that Jayden Reed can be played in a lot of situations. I struggle to put a tight end over a Jayden Reed. Now, I get why you would do it. I mean, this is an outside-the-box thinking question because you need to maximize points, and Jayden Reed, the problem with him is if he had Jordan Love this week, it'd be a no-brainer. Like, you wouldn't ask me this question, right? With Likely over against the Raiders, I think Likely is a great tight end play this week. I think in a lot of situations I would play him. I'm playing him again in my Dynasty League where I have Isaiah Likely. But I wouldn't play him over Reed because I still do believe that Jaden Reed is going to, like, as the season goes, I think Jaden Reed starts to enter new territories and new tiers for people that he hasn't been to before. And people start to consider Reed a Debo Samuel, which is what I've been saying for a while. I think Jaden Reed is Green Bay's Debo Samuel. This dude is in constant motion, literally almost every play for the Green Bay Packers, and gets carries and gets sweeps and gets targets. Like, this dude is such a threat for this Green Bay offense that even without Love, I believe is still going to be really involved. And I get it, like this week also, the problem is that he suffered an injury and he's going to play today from what I've seen. But at the same time, like, I don't know whether he's going to be limited and like what he's going to be, what his involvement's going to be. Let me see if I can get an update on Jaden Reed. Yeah, Rappaport said he's expected to play today. Yeah, I mean, Reed's gonna play. So there's no need to worry about Reed. But I will say that, like, it's a legitimate question. I get it. I would go with Reed. Personally, I would go with Reed. Appreciate the super chat though, Nate Dog. Always good to see you. Gyro Carcamo, what's going on? Half PPR, start 2. Wide receiver, Cooper, Reed, Palmer, and Myers. Jaden Reed and Amari Cooper for sure. Jaden Reed, like I said, he's going to be involved regardless of who the quarterback is because he's he's one of the few that's going to get rushing attempts, sweeps. Like, they're going to find a way to get the ball in Jaden Reed's hands. Count on it. He's too good. He's too good not to. Amari Cooper, because he's going to get, I think there's a legitimate chance Amari sees like 15 targets today. Maybe he doesn't see exactly 15, but without Njoku and based on the 9 targets he had last week, he's the number 1 by a mile in Cleveland. So I think there's a chance, but it probably ends up around like 10 to 12. So Amari Cooper, Jaden Reed, Palmer, and Myers, man, like, I'm not going to get into my Palmer rant because I just think it's redundant at this point, and I think people get the message. And I think Myers is sometimes flexible. I don't think it's this week. Appreciate the super chat, though. Dizzy B, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Daniels or Murray? I got this question earlier. And if I remember, I think it may have been you who asked that. And I said, I love Jayden Daniels this week. Not only because of the matchup, but because of what we saw last week. I mean, last week he was so dominant on the ground against a defense that's pretty good. I mean, Tampa's defense is no slouch. Man, it's tough. I think that, because I think Kyler's in line for a good game today too. And Jayden, if he can improve on his throws, like this is what I said earlier this week, which is that the matchup is better against the Giants defense. So what if we get to a situation where Jayden Daniels doesn't run the ball as much? Like, what if he only has like 50 yards on the ground and a touchdown instead of 88 and 2 touchdowns was what he had last week? But what if he throws for 240 yards rather than like the 180 he threw last week and a touchdown? Like, it's kind of like even Steven, right? Like, it's almost even Steven at least. So I think, Jayden Daniels is kind of like, I wouldn't say bust proof because he can't bust because he's a rookie. I would play him over Murray. Yeah, I would play Daniels over Murray because I think the upside with him is so ridiculously high, and he's on a roll. He looks like he meshes well with Cliff Kingsbury right now. We'll see how that ends up playing out, but I'll go with Jayden Daniels. Knight, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Wan'Dale Robinson, Quentin Johnston, Yeshovis, or Dortch? Half PPR, Shaheed, Mooney, McMillan, or Luke McCaffrey. Half PPR, injuries have demolished me. It's so crazy. That's what I said at the top of this live stream. Football moves really fast. Every day is like a year. That's really what it is at this point. It's a violent sport, man. It's a violent game. Wan'Dale, Johnston, Yeshovis, or Dortch. They're all very, very close in the same tier. I don't think it's Johnston's week. The matchup doesn't really give them much competitive. I think the Panthers are going to get crushed again. And I think it happens early. So I don't think that Johnston is really much of a long game threat. So unless he hits on like a pretty good crosser for a touchdown early, his chances are limited. So I'm not going to go with Johnston. Keep your eye on him, but I'm not going with him this week. Wan'Dale's going to get targets. I think Dortch will get targets again. Yeshovis, Yeshivas, I can never figure out how to pronounce that guy's name yet. Yeshivas, I think, is going to be involved this week because of the Chiefs matchup. Like, I've been saying this all week. Don't be surprised. Honestly, I'm going to throw a really wild card out at you guys. Don't be surprised if the Bengals win this game. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm telling you, don't be shocked. I'm picking the Chiefs like myself. I think they're going to win, but I would not be shocked. There is one quarterback in this league who has beat Burrow, or who has beat Mahomes consistently. That's Burrow. Burrow is the guy who could beat Mahomes. Now, there's questions, obviously, whether he's healthy enough and whether he's going downhill. I think they're legitimate. But I'm not saying that Chiefs are going to win this game. Chiefs are going to lose this game, but I think it's possible. And if that's the case, Yeshivas is going to have upside in this matchup. I think that I would personally go with Yeshivas out of this group because he's going to be in a matchup where I think that he's going to be in a matchup that I think they're going to throw the ball a ton. So Yeshivas without T, it just makes sense. Like it just makes sense at this point because Jermaine Burton, like he's not there right now. So I would go with Yeshivas over those guys. Shaheed, Mooney, McMillan, or McCaffrey. I'd go Shaheed. Yeah, Shaheed's the biggest upside play. I mean, him and McMillan are both guys that are like, you kind of need to hit on a big play. I think that Rashid Shaheed is a better player than McMillan at this point, so I'll go with Rashid Shaheed. And I need to see more with Luke McCaffrey. I need to see more with Mooney. But I would say both of those guys are kind of knocking, especially Mooney. Mooney is knocking at the door of flexible territory. He's not there yet, but he's knocking at the door. Just got an alert. There's optimism that Bears Rome Odunze will play in Sunday Night Football tonight. And I also saw that Keenan is a true game time decision. So Rome could theoretically, I guess, take over wide receiver 2 tonight. We'll see. That was the latest update I got, though. Appreciate the super chat, Knight. Fat Walrus, what's going on? Bowers or Ingram? Flip a coin before kickoff? It really is close to a coin flip, honestly. It really is close. I think I would probably go with... Bowers. Based on involvement last week. I probably would go with Bowers, yeah. It really is... It's close to a coin flip. I would go with Bowers, though. Because I think that Bowers is just... I mean, he showed more involvement last week, and I think he's the better player between him and Ingram. Like, what if the Jags offense, their weapons, like with Kirk and with Ingram in particular, what if they're just getting old and they don't have it anymore? It's possible. It's definitely possible. So yeah, I think that I think I would go with Bowers personally. Bowers is probably the better play. Appreciate the super chat, though. Rock out. What's going on? Good to see you in here. Jacobs over Worthy, PPR. This I would do. Yeah. I would go with Josh Jacobs over Worthy. Because the thing about Worthy is I believe that in a week from now, we'll be talking about Worthy even in better light. Like, I think he will have a good game today. I can't go against the volume that Jacobs is going to see in this game, though. I think it's going to be a Josh Jacobs and Jaden Reed game for the Packers. Because both those guys have rushing upside. And I think that Malik Willis will probably check the ball down quite a bit today. So I think Josh Jacobs, like, the workload I'm expecting from Jacobs today outshines what I think Xavier Worthy's going to do. Now, I think that Xavier Worthy has upside to get another touchdown at least in this game. But for me, I think that ultimately the favor lies with Jacobs and the volume he's going to see. So I would go with Josh Jacobs. Worthy is not a must start yet, but he's getting close. He's getting really, really close at this point for me. So I would say, keep your eye on Worthy. Obviously, I would not sell Worthy right now, especially with news that we got that Hollywood Brown is not coming back this year. There's no threat. I mean, it's literally an open field for Xavier Worthy to run through. It's all there for him. So I think Worthy ends up being a really good flex option. In a couple weeks, I want to see another week of more volume, though, so I'll go with Josh Jacobs when I know the volume is there for Josh Jacobs. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we're going to go back up at the top. You guys can see how full the chat is. The way to jump the line is not to spam. The way to jump the line is to do a super chat. That's how you get your question answered immediately. And make sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you have not done so already. We're going to start back up at the top here. Ibrahim Ala something. Pickens, J-Mo, or Alexander Madison. I would go with J-Mo. Yeah, I think J-Mo is the better play between the three because, again, I think that with Jameson, at least we know that he's going to be on a great offense. So even if he doesn't get 9 targets again, which I personally don't expect he will, I think 9 targets was like probably more than you'll see the rest of the year. I think that his targets last week was like way more than he's ever gotten in the past, and I don't expect to see that on a weekly basis. With Pickens, he may very well see 6 or 8 targets, but this Surtain matchup is horrible. I'm telling you, it's horrible. Alexander Madison, gross. He's not in the same tier. Bad matchup, bad offense. I don't think he'll be as involved this week. Maybe he will be, but no. No. I'm playing Jameson Williams out of this group right here. That's the way the cookie crumbles for me. Noah 305. Should I start Zeke Elliott? I have CMC and Kenneth, and they're both injured. If I shouldn't start him, can I have some pickup or trade options for him? I mean, basically, you're kind of in a position where you need to start him, right? I mean, you have Walker and you have McCaffrey. They're both out, obviously, so you kind of need to start him. I mean, he's a decent RB3, right? Like, he's a good RB3 option to have in fantasy. So based on your situation this week, yeah, I mean, you kind of need to play him. You kind of need to. Can I pick up or trade options for him? Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is a guy that you can really trade right now because it's not like he came out and it was a world beater last week. Like, he got in the end zone, that saved his week. So I don't know who realistically is going to give you like a legitimate good amount of value for somebody like him. Zeke, I think people just kind of know the writing's on the wall. Like, Zeke looks like the guy in Dallas right now, but the he's not the same player. So I think the writing's on the wall. I would wait. If I wanted to sell Zeke, I would wait until he has like a good week where he gets like 2 touchdowns. Or a week where he gets like 7 catches or something like that. Could be this week, but you need to start Zeke based on your situation right now for sure. Rajesh Sabramian, what's going on? Elliott, Amari, and Godwin. Which two to start? Amari and Godwin. Yeah, I would say Amari and Godwin because I think that with Zeke, the upside, again, I just don't think it's particularly high against the Saints. Like, I think that the only way Zeke has real upside is if he gets targets, and it could happen this week. Like, it definitely could happen. I don't love this matchup. Amari, I know targets are going to be there. Godwin in this matchup against the Lions, I don't love, but I do think that that it's going to be a good enough matchup. And based on last week, like I said, I think I may have been wrong about Godwin. I haven't been a Godwin guy in a while, and I mean, he looks really good. Last week, he looked really good. He caught every single pass that he got thrown. So I think it's there for him. So I would go with Godwin and Amari. Medina 2197. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I can start 2 full PPR league. Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, I'm assuming, Charbonnet. Thanks. So I think that, again, we're in a situation where Jacobs, his volume supersedes the upside of Aaron Jones this week. Because we know Jones is not going to see the volume that Jacobs is going to see, that's for sure. Jacobs is going to see a ridiculous amount of volume this week. And Aaron Jones, I think this matchup is just brutal. And it's not going to be, I think, a legitimate thing. I think he may have peaked last week. I think he may have peaked. I think Aaron Jones is a good sell-high guy. I think he was a good sell-high guy at the beginning of the week. I don't think that this matchup is good, and I don't think he's going to see the volume. So Jacobs over Jones for sure. Brian Robinson, I would play as the second guy. I think that Brian Robinson is, again, he's gonna start to emerge as a top 15 back, in my opinion. This matchup is pretty good. It's not bad. It's pretty good. And he's going to see a lot of efficiency, man, with Jaden Daniels because defenses know they can't just stack the box to stop the running back. They have to plan for Jaden Daniels' legs. So I think that Jacobs and Brian Robinson are the better plays. Now, Charbonnet is my third option here. In order for me, it goes like this. Jacobs, Brian Robinson, Charbonnet, Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is in trouble this week. I think he's in legitimate trouble. So that's what I would do personally. Appreciate the super chat, though. Z, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Scary Terry or Monty? Flex, full PPR. Monty for sure. Montgomery it's not really close. Like for me personally, Montgomery we know is going to get a good amount of carries, may very well lead the backfield in carries again, right? And we know he's going to get the red zone work, the goal line work, and at least 15 to 16 carries in this game, and their offensive line is elite. With Terry, we have no idea if he gets 6 targets this week, right? I mean, it's not good. The Terry situation is not good. So yeah, I would go with Montgomery over Terry without question. Appreciate the super chat. Deck, what's going on? Start 2. Flowers, Olave, Tank, or Marvin Harrison Jr. Between these 4, I would go with Olave and Tank. Because with Zay, again, the Zay upside is just capped. And especially in this game where I think it's going to be a Derrick Henry game script, I don't see a ton of upside for Zay this week. I think that Zay's upside is capped because they're going to get out to an early lead, and I think they're going to keep it and not need to throw very much. Now, Zay is always going to be relevant, and he's always going to have a role, and always will be flex-worthy because he gets targets at the line of scrimmage. I did see Jaden Reed is officially active today. But Zay is an issue just based on the fact that he doesn't see a bunch of targets downfield. He did see a couple last week, so I had a hair just like floating in my face. He did see a couple targets deep last week, but they're few and far between, it seems to be. Olave, I think that Olave is going to be fine this week. Olave is going to be just fine. He's going to be much more needed and much more valuable to the team this week in a matchup they are not going to have nearly the amount of ease with that they did last week. They didn't need to throw like by end of the second quarter. So he basically had half of the game to really prove that he could do anything. So I think that Olave is going to be just fine. And then Tank is a slight gut call over Marv. I prefer to go with Tank because I believe that the upside in the offense is better. Now, this week, I think Marv is much better. I think he's much more involved. But Tank, I know his involvement. Like, Tank had 7 targets last week. He's going to be really good. So I would go with Tank over Marv. That's a very, close. It's close enough to where I would consider it. But at the end of the day, I would go with Tank. Appreciate the super chat, though. Nate Dogg, what's going on, my man? Appreciate the super chat. Montgomery over Moore. Can I start Baker over Stroud so I can cheer for my Bears? I probably won't make that move, but it'll be good to see my Bears crush Stroud. Go Bears. Nate Dogg, I love your enthusiasm for the Bears. It's awesome. It's awesome. Almost knocked over the camera right there. I love the enthusiasm. There's no way I would start Baker over Stroud personally. Now, I don't think it's actually an outrageous question on the surface. On the surface, it might sound crazy, but I think if you actually dive deeper into this one, it's not an outrageous question because, Stroud is going up against tough defense. There's no question. The Bears are not an easy defense to play. Now, I think it ultimately doesn't matter because I think Stroud is he's just too elite of a player that I don't worry about Stroud in matchups anymore. He's kind of out of that let's see what the matchup is question. Unless I have Mahomes or Anthony Richardson or Lamar, unless I have another top option, I'm playing Stroud without even thinking about it. So no, I wouldn't play Baker over Stroud personally, but I think when you dive deeper into it, it's a question you can ask, but I think maybe overthought. I would go with Stroud, and then Monty over Moore? No, I'd play DJ Moore. Because even if both Keenan and Rome end up playing tonight, the reality is they're going to both be limited. They'll both be, even if they play, all the snaps, they're going to be limited as far as, their health goes. And they won't be as effective. So, I'm going to go ahead and play Moore because I think Moore in this matchup, out of necessity, he's going to get 12 targets or something. Now, the matchup is not good. It's not good. The matchup versus Stingley is rough. But DJ Moore is elite. So, I don't worry about him as much versus worrying about somebody like Michael Pittman, right? Michael Pittman, is a legitimate concern for me when he takes on Stingley, whereas DJ Moore has proven himself that he's an elite receiver. So, it's not a good matchup, but the involvement is going to be there at a high level this week because of necessity, because even if both Keenan and Rome play, they're going to be limited to a capacity, I think. If not, I think they'll be on the field, obviously, but even when they're on the field, they're not going to get thrown to a bunch, I don't think. So I think DJ Moore has tons of upside in this matchup tonight. So I would go with DJ Moore over Monty. Appreciate the super chat. Always good to see you in here. Lewis Ranchod, you were next. What's going on? Hello, thanks for all your content. Well, I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. With Allen banged up, who would you start? Brian Thomas Jr., Jalen Warren, Jaleel McLaughlin, or Tyler Johnson? I think that... I think with Brian Thomas Jr., I would play him over McLaughlin for sure. I would play him over Tyler Johnson because I think Brian Thomas Jr. is in a better, more trustworthy spot because, again, I think Tyler Johnson is the number 2 behind Kupp at this point, but that's wide receivers. Now, there's 2 problems with Tyler Johnson. Number 1 is it could be Robinson. I mean, Robinson was involved last week. Johnson was just better. Now, the other problem that he has, if it's not Robinson, could very easily be Parkinson. That takes up a bunch of the actual work in this offense. So, like, it's not like a smooth, easy ride for Tyler Johnson to be the number 2 target. He's got obstacles. Whereas with Brian Thomas Jr., like, at the very least, he's the number 2. At this point, he is. Like, matchup is not as good, but he's the number 2, so I would go with them. Jaylen Warren, I would play Brian Thomas Jr. I hate this matchup. Like, I really do, and I think that the only thing that I can think is like a saving grace for Jaylen Warren is that they didn't use him as much last week because they were just trying to ease him back in from that hamstring injury that he suffered in the preseason, right? Like, that's the only thing I can think of that would be a reason why he didn't get many opportunities last week. So, but I can't, based on what he did last week, play him in a matchup that is expected to be the lowest scoring matchup of the entire week, according to Vegas and according to me. So I can't play Jaylen Warren. I would play Brian Thomas Jr. out of that bunch. I think it just makes the most sense. Appreciate the super chat. Zide, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Thanks for the help last week. In half PPR, which 2 flex are you picking? Currently leaning McLaurin, Moss, but have Cooks, Madison, Dortch as well. I am leaning that way as well. I'm leaning that way as well because I believe that Cooks is volatile, right? Like, Brandon Cooks is, like, I get it. Last week obviously was cool and everything. I thought it was a really cool situation that he ended up playing a lot and being a really viable option for them. But at the same time, man, like with Brandon Cooks, I just don't really trust that he's going to maintain this consistently because I've seen it before. Like with Brandon Cooks, like I've seen wishy-washy involvement from him. So I just don't really ultimately trust him that much to stay involved, right? Like that's my ultimate problem with him. With Madison, there's no way. There's literally I would play so many other guys over Madison. I just think it's going to be really bad this week for the Raiders. Dortch is the better play than Madison, and I would probably play Cooks over Dortch. But again, none of these guys are really in the same tier. Because the one thing, as much as I've been banging on Terry today, the one thing that we can count on with Terry is that he is the number 1. He will be the number 1 in Washington. So he has legitimate number 1 volume coming his way. And Moss, I think, is in a matchup where I think he could be like a touchdown threat. I think Moss has legitimate opportunity to get in the end zone. So I would go with exactly what you did, which is McLaurin and Moss. Again, I appreciate the super chat though. Make sure you guys have liked this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We're going to stay on here basically close to game time, and we are going to go back to the top. Rock, what's going on? Start Charbonnet or Brian Robinson Jr. in full PPR flex, brother. I think you can't. They're really close. Again, they're basically very close to the same tier. Brian Robinson's my guy. I think Brian Robinson, because he's in a better not necessarily a better offense, but in better for a running back because he's going to be efficient. He's going to be really efficient. So ultimately, I think that his situation is really good because the defenses can't stack the box and just plan on a Brian Robinson run. They have to respect Jaden's legs. Jaden can, I mean, I'm not expecting what he did last week because last week literally was like historic what he did as a rookie quarterback. I'm not expecting that again, but I mean, I'm expecting 50 yards and maybe another touchdown. So yeah, I think Brian Robinson's in a great position where, and I like the matchup. I don't believe that Zach Charbonnet is in a great matchup, and based on what he did last year as the number one, I'm worried. I'm definitely worried. Michael Lopez, what's going on? PPR, I have a big trade. I have Chase trying to decide to do I take Mahomes and Gibbs or Jackson and Achane? You have Chase. I'm assuming Jamar Chase is what you're saying. Mahomes and Gibbs or Jackson and Achane? I mean, it's really close. I mean, the one thing I will say is the problem that I see that's going to come for Achane here, and we didn't see it immediately, right? Like, Achane obviously had a great game on Thursday night, so people are feeling good right now about Achane. The problem that I see incoming is the more games that Tua misses, this team is going to be, if Thursday night was an indication, they'll be really reliant on Achane, and that's not good because Achane is not proven to be a guy that can handle that workload without getting injured. Talent-wise, of course he can handle it. That's not the question here, though. The question is, can he stay healthy? And comes into the game as a game-time decision, ends up playing and handling a massive workload, which is great for us in fantasy. But if you watch that game to the bitter end, that dude looked gassed at the end. He was grimacing. Like, he did not look like he was feeling too good. So I worry about Achane's long term. Whereas with Gibbs, you can make an argument, right? Like, Gibbs was injured before the season. So obviously it's like, can we trust his health long term? Ultimately, I can, because they have more weapons and a better quarterback situation. I just read today, apparently, like, Tua has no plans to retire. Not a surprise to me whatsoever. That I still believe, personally, I believe, come next week, the NFL will force the Dolphins, and maybe it's already happened, maybe they're just waiting till next week. I believe the Dolphins will be forced to place Tua on the IR. I think that the NFL is going to make them wait at least 4 games to play Tua again. And again, I worry about Jahmyr Gibbs long-term. Or I'm sorry, I worry about Achane long-term more than I worry about Gibbs. So I would personally go with the Gibbs side because also, like, with Mahomes and Jackson, like, I still prefer Mahomes over Lamar. Personally, I think he's going to, the more and more that Xavier Worthy gets involved, the more and more potential I see for Mahomes to have, like, a 40-plus passing touchdown year. I think he'll be lights out this year, so I would go with Mahomes. Let's see what's going on. Let's see if we can get some inactive updates. Let's take a little pause. Let's go look at some inactives so we can make some decisions. Let's get some inactive report right now. So obviously McCaffrey's out. We already talked about that. Let's go to this. NFL inactives, week 2. Well, the inactives list should be out, and I can't seem to find it. Jaden Reed is in. Let's see. I'm going to go to this rap sheet tweet. So obviously Jordan Love's out. So that's not a big deal. One thing that is worth noting, Marshawn Lattimore, New Orleans Saints corner, he's out. That's a good thing for CeeDee Lamb, although it really doesn't matter. Ultimately, you play CeeDee Lamb either way. So it's not the end of the world if Marshawn did play, but, positive thing. Jamison Williams is active. Good sign. Walker, Jake Ferguson, Josh Downs inactive. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing. Those are kind of the big ones right now. Those are the big ones right now that I'm seeing. So Jaden Reed's in. Gonna be playing with Jordan Love, or without Jordan Love though. So high-end flex option, but definitely not a must start at this point, unfortunately. High-end flex, not a must start, in my opinion. So that's where we're at right now with inactives. Let's get back into some questions. Guys, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And again, guys, last hour you could take advantage of the CeeDee Lamb free line. Underdog's got his line, half a yard. If you want to take advantage of it, use the link in the description and use code FFN. They'll match your first deposit 50% when you deposit $10, up to $1,000 in bonus cash, and you'll be able to take advantage of the free line. So if you want to, use that link in the description. Let's go ahead and get back to the top. Mauricio Ponce, DJ Moore, or Rashee Rice? Yeah, I think this is a situation where I would say Rashee Rice still. DJ Moore does have a good amount of upside in this game because, like I said, tonight, even if Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze play in this game, they're going to be limited, maybe not snaps, but they'll be limited based on what they can physically do. Because they're both, I don't think either of them practiced at all this week. So, they're not at 100% clearly. Rashee Rice against this Bengals defense, though, I can't not play Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is top 10 this week. DJ Moore is more towards top 12 because there still is an issue with Caleb Williams. I still don't think that Caleb's going to have a rough go at it again because Caleb is taking on the Texans in Houston on Sunday Night Football. It's not going to be an easy game for him. With Mahomes, there's no issues, right? It's the great matchup. It's that situation. Mahomes and Rashee Rice, number one target. Just makes too much sense to sit. You can't sit Rashee Rice in most situations. So I would want to get DJ Moore in my lineup, but if it's between him and Rice, it's not happening. Andy Alvarez, what's going on? Cooks or Allen? I'm assuming you're saying Keenan Allen is what I'm assuming. Yeah, I mean, based on uncertainty whether he's playing or not, you have to go with Cooks. I hate inactives and not inactives. I hate game time decisions and questionable tags on Sunday and Monday night. There's nothing I hate more in fantasy than those two things. They drive me up the freaking wall. So, based on that, I would have to go with Cooks because we don't know if Allen's playing or not. Apparently, he's a true game time decision. So, you can't roll that dice unless you have a Rome Odunze. And even then, that's a dangerous roll too because he is questionable as well. And it looks like he may be a game time decision. Unless you have like a Darnell Mooney that you're willing to play, like on Monday night, or Jahan Dotson, then I would have to say Brandon Cooks is your option. Because I'm not really even convinced there's a massive gap between the production that Keenan could provide this week versus Brandon Cooks. So might as well take the guy who's healthier at this point in time. So yeah, I would say Brandon Cooks. Carly Fitzpatrick, what's going on? Austin Eckler or Brandon Cooks at flex? Eckler obviously was a worthy enough play last week because he did see volume, and more than I thought. Like, I did not think he had a chance to see that level of volume. I really didn't. I thought he was going to vindicate me and prove me right because I'd been out on him for so long. He ended up being involved. I still don't trust it. I still think he's a descending asset at some point. And with Brandon Cooks, like, you know, especially without Marshawn Lattimore, that secondary is going to look weak today. I think the Cowboys, honestly, like, Dak probably gets a little bit of a bump. He probably does. Like, CD, obviously, like, he was a number 2 option for me this week behind Tyreek. Obviously, that didn't go well, but CD is going to be great today. That's why you need to take advantage of the underdog line in the description. But I would say Brandon Cooks is the play for me over Austin Eckler because Austin Eckler, I can't rely on that workload. I just can't. Like, I think that it's very possible that he comes out and has not zero, but I think there's a possibility he comes out and has like 3 targets today. And if he doesn't catch any of them, like, it's worthless. So I would go with Brandon Cooks. Joey Mooney, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR, RB2, Aaron Jones or Devin Singletary? Don't love either one of these. I think I would probably end up going with Aaron Jones myself because I believe in the player more. Look, I have a problem with Singletary. The offense with Singletary sucks, and I don't personally think that Singletary is like an amazing player. I don't think so personally. I think that Singletary he's fine. I think he's okay, but I don't think that he's like some terrific player that can overcome the situation he's in. Like, that's the problem is, like, when you have Saquon Barkley is like the perfect example. Like, Saquon has been dealing with this offense with Daniel Jones basically his entire career in the NFL. And he's been able to overcome it for elite fantasy production because he is an elite player. Singletary is not even close. Like, so this situation is so bad in New York that I think it's like you have to have an elite running back to be able to overcome this. Singletary's not that. And even though the matchup is good this week, I just don't think Singletary is in a good situation. Whereas Aaron Jones is the exact opposite. I believe in Aaron Jones, the player, more than I believe in Singletary. But his matchup is brutal against the 49ers today. So it's like, take your pick, honestly, because I think that Aaron Jones is in a brutal matchup, but I just trust him more. I trust him a lot more, personally. I do trust him more. So I would go with Aaron Jones because I think that Singletary is, I think Singletary is just in a rough spot. Appreciate the super chat, though. Cal Har, what is going on, my brother-in-law? Someone in a 12-team team dropped Odunze. Should I add him and drop Lockett or Demarcus Robinson? Odunze is a really tough one to put my finger on right now. Because with Rome Odunze, I think that he is, at some point, going to be the wide receiver 2 in Chicago. I think it will happen at some point. because they obviously, like, draft capital speaks. They drafted him in the top 10. They're going to try to get him involved sooner than later. And real quick update, A.J. Brown has been downgraded to out tomorrow night. So pull him from your lineups, everybody. A.J. Brown officially ruled out. We don't need to play it. A.J. Brown is out. But back to your question, Cal. I think that Odunze will be the wide receiver 2 at some point. I do think that it's going to be sooner than later. Because Keenan Allen, if he was fully healthy, I would say it's going to take time. But Keenan's not even, like, he's older, obviously, and he's not even fully healthy right now. I wouldn't drop Lockett just yet because he very well may be the wide receiver 2 at some point, like, for the duration of the season. Demarcus Robinson, I really don't have much confidence in. I think the better option between the two is Tyler Johnson. So I think I would roll the dice and pick up Odunze and drop Demarcus Robinson. I think that's what I would do because, again, Rome will be fantasy valuable at some point this year. I just don't know exactly when it will be. Based on the way things are trending, I tend to believe it's going to be sooner than later because of the fact that Keenan is injured. But again, Rome's injured too. So, like, it's not exactly like some walk in the park for Rome to become the number 2. But I would roll the dice and pick up Rome off the waivers personally. And drop Robinson. Chico Man, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. McConkey or Cooper at flex? Chargers or Browns defense? Well, I like the McConkey and Cooper question because McConkey did raise up for me over the past couple days. I think that ultimately I still prefer Amari because the matchup is great against the Jags, and obviously, like, it's good based on, like, personnel defensively for Ladd McConkey as well. But I maintain this. I think the Panthers are going to get just run all over by every team they play this year. Not only did they get crushed last week, but Derek Brown, their best defensive player at this point, all-pro type of player, he's out for the year. So, like, it's not going to be good for the Panthers at any point. It's a bad situation. So, I personally think that Ladd is going to be a play in a lot of different weeks when they're not playing the Panthers and can run all over them. So, I think the Chargers will run all over them. I think Ladd is going to be a better play in future weeks. He's not a bad play this week, but he's a better play. Amari, I think legitimately sees 12 targets today. I mean, they have nobody else. Like, it's literally him. Because you can't convince me Judy is any good. Like, I've seen Judy play for too long. This guy looks disinterested. Like, I just don't really like Jerry Jeudy very much. He just seems, no, I'm not going to say that. But I don't like Jerry Jeudy very much because I just don't think he's a very good player. And Amari, just with Njoku out, and based on the fact he had 9 targets last week, I think Amari is going to be really involved against the Jags offense that is better, and the Jags are favored in this game. So the Jags are I think the Jags are going to win personally. So the Browns are going to have to keep up. And I think that comes through a lot of usage with Amari Cooper. So I would go Amari, and then I would definitely go Chargers defense. The Browns have not, the Chargers have not moved, for me personally, up or down. Chargers are still number 1. They can't move up, possibly, so they're number 1. They have not moved down. The Chargers defense is elite this week. I cannot wait to play the Chargers. I picked up the Chargers last week because I knew their 3-game stretch was really good. I can't wait to play the Chargers. So yeah, I would go with the Chargers defense over the Browns defense. Appreciate the super chat. Mike, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Charbonnet, Monty, McConkey, Pickens, full PPR flex. If you're just picking one, for me it's Montgomery. I mean, you have some good options here. You have some good options. So I do think that, it's going to be a situation where Charbonnet is either going to do really well or he's going to be pretty mediocre. And I personally lean on the side of it being a little mediocre. I definitely would not play him over Monty. Monty is just a better option. He's just a better option. The offense is loaded. The offensive line is elite. I think that Charbonnet would have better weeks if it wasn't this week playing the Patriots. I don't think the matchup's great. With Ladd, again, like I just said, with Ladd, my ultimate problem is that I don't think they're going to need to throw much by, like at the latest, third quarter. Mid to late third quarter. I think by then they won't really need to throw that much. So I'm ultimately not, I think Ladd has great weeks in the future ahead of him. I don't think it's this week. And then Pickens, I've been saying it for a while. Pickens is in a situation where he is going to struggle this week because he's taking on Pat Surtain. That's a tough matchup, man. That is a brutally hard matchup. So I personally think that Monty is the best play out of all of them. But, I mean, you have pretty good problems. Those are not bad options by any stretch of the imagination. Appreciate the super chat, though. Let's take a really quick look again. See if we can get any more Inactives news. Nothing really big, but obviously, guys, if you're just joining me and you haven't seen it yet, AJ Brown has officially been ruled out. So pull AJ Brown, put in Devonta Smith 100% if you have Devonta Smith. Let's just go ahead and talk about the impact of AJ Brown being out. So AJ Brown being out means a couple different things. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, you're playing him either way, so there's no need to talk about it. I think that AJ Brown being out means Devonta Smith is a basically lock must start in most situations. Now, I don't imagine there's many people out there that are looking down the barrel of a Rashee Rice versus Devonta Smith situation. I think most people don't have that luxury. So I would say that 90% of the time, 99% of the time, Devonta Smith needs to be in your lineup. The big question, I think, especially in deeper leagues, is Jahan Dotson a legitimate flex option this week? I think he is. I think he's a legitimate flex play. Now, based on the fact that we haven't seen him do anything with the Eagles, you don't know what to expect from him, which makes him a lower tier flex option for me. He's in that range of Wan'Dale Robinson types, Tank Bigsby types. It probably would play him over both of those guys. Maybe not Wan'Dale. I think I would play Wan'Dale over Jahan Dotson. But I do think that Dotson is definitely flexible because he will be involved tomorrow. I'd be shocked if he wasn't. So Goddard probably gets a bump up at the tight end position. I'm still not very comfortable with Goddard. I just don't think he's very good. But based on involvement last week, I do believe he gets a bump up. So I think he was the tight end 13 for me this week. He probably goes up to tight end at the very least tight end 12. He'll get the nod over Pitts this week for me. But I still think that he's a risky play. He's a risky play. So that's kind of the impact for me personally on AJ Brown being out. But again, if you're just joining, pull AJ Brown from your lineup right now. Hopefully you have a backup plan. So definitely expecting some AJ Brown backup plan questions here. So we're still obviously live, so make sure to put it in. The way to get your question answered immediately is to do a super chat. Fam first, what's going on? Would you start J-Mo versus the Bucks over DK versus Pats today? No, I wouldn't personally. I can't get there yet with Jameson Williams. I think DK is gonna see a better, more consistent target share over the year. And I think we'll see that with Jameson this week, as I think Jameson is not going to be as good as last week. I think Jameson is going to have good games. I think he's a better best ball play. Like in best ball, if you play best ball and underdog, I think Jameson Williams on a week-to-week basis is a great underdog best ball play. And obviously, if you drafted him for like best ball mania, I think he's a great option. But I don't trust him just yet, putting him in over guys of the likes of DK Metcalf. I think DK is the better play. I think that with DK, the only thing that worries me here is the targets because of Geno. Like Geno, I'm not in on Geno personally. I'm not a big Geno guy, and I don't think this is an easy matchup personally. I don't think so. So I would go with DK over J-Mo. And again, appreciate the super chat. Okay, I've seen it from a couple people that Evan Ingram is out. Let me check on this. I haven't seen it anywhere, but I mean, let's see. I've seen it too many times in the chat. Yeah, Evan Ingram's out. Evan Ingram is officially ruled out against the Cleveland Browns today. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't play the Jags backup tight end, but let's talk about how this affects the Jags. So, Evan Ingram officially ruled out for the Jacksonville Jaguars today. So, how does it affect the options? What happens to everybody? I think that with their options, they're going to be looking at Brian Thomas. Honestly, I'd probably going to put him into my lineup a lot of times. You might actually see me make a live move. I'm going to change my dynasty roster and put Brian Thomas in this week. I think, pregame warm-up hammy injury. Brutal. So, with Ingram out, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a high-end flex option now. Like, he's in the range of guys like Charbonnet for me personally. Obviously, Kirk is still very flexible. Gabe Davis becomes flexible. And ETN probably gets a bump just because of targets. So I would say Brian Thomas Jr., I'm actually going to make a live adjustment on my dynasty team. Because I have Evan Ingram in one of my dynasty leagues and I have Brian Thomas in the other. And I do want to make a change and put Brian Thomas in there. That's so wild, man. I mean, that's how you know football is back. Football is a very violent sport, and the reality is that there's injuries every single week, and it's unfortunate that that's the case, but, that's the situation we're dealing with. So, I ended up playing Brian Thomas Jr. over Keenan Allen because Keenan's injury is obviously a big concern. Again, I would advise, honestly, a lot of people to play. I would advise a lot of people to play Brian Thomas Jr. I think we'll get some questions in for Brian Thomas as well, because I think that Brian Thomas is a good play this week. Kirk is fine just based on targets alone, because I think he will get plenty of targets. But I don't love the situation. I think Kirk is just not as good as he used to be. I think Christian Kirk is not as good as he used to be. So yeah, I personally like Brian Thomas Jr. over Kirk at this point this week in this matchup. That's what I think. Appreciate y'all's patience. I just made the trade. I just made the switch. I put Brian Thomas Jr. over Keenan in my lineup this week, and I just made the switch to pull Ingram in place of Isaiah Likely. So I have Isaiah Likely in a lot of leagues. Side note. All right, let's get back to questions. Because we're gonna have some questions about AJ Brown and Evan Ingram impacts. I'm just gonna look for common questions about these two teams and answer those. Trevor Lawrence or Justin Herbert? I think at this point, I would go with Herbert, personally. Because, I mean, I'm not big on Lawrence anyways against the Browns. And especially without his main target. Because that's really what it is. Like, Ingram provides steady upside because he's a target guy. He's a target guy. So without his main target, I'm worried about what his long-term impact is. And not long-term, I'm worried about his impact in fantasy today. And Justin Herbert, it's like you're really just kind of flipping a coin with either one of these guys. Because Herbert very well could be a couple touchdowns and then like not throw much more. So I'll take that over the uncertainty of playing the Browns defense, which is exactly what Trevor Lawrence is dealing with. So I'll go with Herbert over Lawrence at this point. Daniel Tremois, what's going on? Tremels. Yeah, Daniel Tremels, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Pick 3 full PPR. Neighbors, Amari Cooper, Brian Thomas Jr., Pittman, or Worthy. Pick 3, I would go with Neighbors for sure. Neighbors has got to be in there. I would go with Cooper and Brian Thomas Jr. are actually really close for me at this point. Because the problem with Cooper is the quarterback obviously sucks. The problem with Brian Thomas is I don't trust the player yet, but he's being put into a situation where it's like the opportunity is immediately incredibly good. Like, not based on defense. Like, that matchup is obviously really tough, but based on kind of being put into a number 1 role, like, I think it's just in really good position for him to do well in fantasy this week. I would play Brian Thomas Jr. over Worthy today. I would. So I'm going to go with Neighbors. I'm going to go with Cooper. And I'm going to go with Pittman over Brian Thomas Jr. Still, because I think Pittman is going to be really fine. Like, Pittman had a 45% target share last week. Like, that's the thing with Pittman. And the reason I can't play Brian Thomas over him, because, again, Thomas is a rookie, and Pittman is like he's a really expensive player. He's their clear number 1. So it's like, I realistically think that he's going to have a lot of upside at some point, and I think this week against the Packers is a good matchup. So I would go with Neighbors, and I would go with Cooper, and I would go with Pittman myself. Appreciate the super chat, though. Brian03. Appreciate the super chat, man. Start 2. Jacobs, Kamara, Charbonnet. Don't you hate it when you just get like a big clump of ice? Like whenever you take a sip of water or something? I think that Jacobs and Kamara have to be my choices. Jacobs based on volume. I think he has a chance to crush it. And I believe like a good counter for somebody who wanted to play Charbonnet, I'm projecting would be like Charbonnet is going to see plenty of volume today too. I actually believe you. I'm with you on that. I think he's going to. The problem I have is that I think Green Bay's offense is just much better. I think their offense, the way they run things, is just a much cleaner, much more efficient operation. So I think that, personally, I think that Jacobs is just a lot more trustworthy than Charbonnet. And Kamara, as bad as the matchup is, the one thing that you'll always be able to get by with Kamara is the targets that he's going to see. So I think that Kamara is going to see plenty of targets. And ultimately, it comes from a deeper distrust, I think, for Zach Charbonnet. I really do have a deeper distrust in the player. I just don't think he's particularly great. So I would go ahead and play Kamara and Jacobs over Charbonnet. Appreciate the super chat though. Omar Rios, you were up next. Appreciate the super chat. Start 2, PPR. London, Amari, Terry, or Marvin. I would go with Marvin and London. That feels really uncomfortable, actually. Realistically, I think if it was my team, I would go with Amari and Marvin. Because the problem with Amari, the problem with picking both London and Marvin this week is that you're taking guys with obvious upside, but you're taking guys that barely saw any work last week. So it's like, do you really think that they're going to become safe options already? Like all of a sudden this week, right? Like that's the problem I have with Marvin and London is that you can't just assume this week they're going to be like nobody thinks of it like this, but you can't just. I don't want to play two guys that I don't have a ton of confidence in, but I see upside with. Amari, I know there's going to be the safety blanket of like 12 targets this week. So between Marvin and London, I'm going with the guy I'm more confident in, and that guy for me is Marvin. So I'll go with Marvin over Drake London this week and hope for the best. So I'll go with Marvin, and I will go with Amari Cooper as the two options. Appreciate the super chat, Omar. Over most heads, what's going on? Jay Williams, I'm assuming you're saying Jameson. Jameson Williams, Christian Kirk, Pollard, or Ramondre Stevenson, flex full PBR. Make sure to clarify if you're talking about Javonte or Jameson Williams. Let me know because I'm operating in the assumption that you're talking about Jameson. It really does make a difference. I would go ahead and play Pollard. I would play Pollard this week personally because I think that Pollard was obviously really good last week, and the matchup against the Jets is not particularly fantastic, but I do think that Pollard will ultimately be more effective than Ramondre this week against the Seahawks. Like I know I've gotten plenty of flack for Ramondre for a while. Whatever. I just don't believe in this Patriots offense very much. So yeah, I think that Pollard is the better play. Kirk is obviously more interesting. I would be shaky about him too. Because I think that all options are pretty shaky in this situation. I think that with Pollard, he's gonna be the guy that I trust the most based on matchup. Because all four of these players, they have bad matchups. Like Jameson's matchup against Tampa Bay is fine, but he's also like coming in potentially a little bit limited. Kirk's matchup against the Browns, not good. Pollard's matchup against the Jets, not great. And Ramondre's matchup against the Seahawks, not good. So I'll go with my gut and play Pollard. But these guys are all really close, so I would say if you're not vibing with that, go with your gut. Always go with your gut. But again, I appreciate the super chat. That is how you get your question answered immediately, guys. But we're going to start back up here a little bit of ways because I want to make sure we get questions answered about the A.J. Brown absence and the Evan Ingram absence, which again, if you haven't heard, Ingram is out. Evan Ingram is ruled out. He got an injury to his hamstring in pregame warmups, and A.J. Brown is also been ruled out for tomorrow night's game. So we're obviously making some changes here. Let's go through any more questions about that. Trying to find popular questions about people's situations now. Okay, this one I just kind of want to talk about. Craig Walker, Goff or Burrow? Yeah, I mean, this is a legitimate one for me because I think that Burrow is going to play better than a lot of people think this week. I think Burrow gets up for this game. I think he gets up for this game against the Chiefs. If it was against, like, the Giants, I don't think Burrow plays great because, again, I've covered this probably more than a lot of fantasy YouTubers have. The Burrow-led Bengals, they've started out slow every freaking year. But then by like week 5, they turn it on. I mean, they beat the 49ers last year when the 49ers were rolling. They've beaten the Chiefs relatively consistently. The Bengals, when they're on, they're freaking on. So, obviously it's different this year. Like, they don't have Mixon, they don't have T right now. So, it's really dependent on, like, Jamar and if Yashovis can do anything. But I think Burrow is legitimate play this week. Goff, I would play Goff, though. I'd play Goff over Burrow because I think that Goff is just more trustworthy at this time, and I think he has, honestly, just as high of upside in this matchup. So I would go with Goff because Tampa's secondary is not particularly strong. So I would go with Goff. Let's see. Okay, Craig Walker. I think I should put Brown out, and put Reed in case Brown is out. Obviously, we know now that Brown is out, so you got to put in Jaden Reed. Okay, the first Devonta Smith question: Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith? For me personally, I'm still playing Chase. I still am playing Chase. Okay, hold on. I saw something I had to click on. I didn't mean to click on it, but I saw that. I'll tell you what I saw after. I'm going with Chase still personally. I think that Chase is a better play because I just trust. I think Chase is a better play. I still think he's a better play. So I'll go with Jamar Chase over Devonta Smith, but I still do like Smith in a lot of more situations. He's not at the threshold yet, though. What I saw was that the Browns, apparently, they removed a clause from Deshaun Watson's contract that would basically void his guarantees, I guess, if he gets another lawsuit, and obviously one came out, so it looks like they might be setting themselves up to, like, cut ties with Deshaun if something else happens. So we'll see how that one plays out. Just something worthy, I think, to note on a side note. Because, Deshaun Watson, I don't like to talk about the personal stuff very much, but he seems like a loser. I think another question. Let's see what else we have. Looking for more popular AJ Brown related questions and Ingram related questions. Blake, what's going on? Caleb Williams or Geno Smith? I would go with Geno because I ultimately think Caleb's going to struggle. It's just not a good game for Caleb. Caleb is in a situation where he has to take on the Texans defense in Houston. Not a good matchup here. And especially with like 2 out of his 3 wide receivers banged up, I don't love this for Caleb. I want to see better weeks from Caleb. With Geno, at least I know, like, he's a veteran, right? Like, he just has a better feel for the NFL game at this point than Caleb does. So I would go with Caleb. Trevor Davidson, Amari Cooper, or Tank Dell? I'd go with Tank. Yeah, I'd still go with Tank in that situation because the good thing about Tank Dell is that the upside in this offense is stupid high. I think it's ridiculously high. So yeah, I would personally go with Tank over Amari Cooper because I think that Amari is mostly just a good play because of targets and the upside that are going to be there. That's going to be there with the targets that he will see. But ultimately, I don't have a ton of confidence in Deshaun Watson. Whereas I have the utmost confidence with CJ Stroud. Let's see what else we got. AJ Brown or Jaden Reed, like I said earlier, AJ Brown, for those of you who haven't heard yet, AJ Brown is out. Pull him from your lineup. He's been officially ruled out. And Evan Ingram is out as well. Suffered a pregame hamstring injury during warmups. Brutal situation for him especially, but that is the situation we're dealing with right now. Okay, here's a good one. Dotson or Reed? So obviously, with Jahan Dotson being the wide receiver 2, probably in Philly this week without A.J. Brown, how high is his ceiling? Where does he go to? What's his threshold? Not Jaden Reed for me. I personally think that Jaden Reed is still the better play. Jaden Reed is in a perfect situation where he is the number 1 wide receiver in the offense that can get more than just targets. So with Malik Willis, there's probably, I would expect 4 or 5 rushes from Jaden Reed today, trying to get him in space. They're going to use him the same way. They're going to use him in motion a bunch. So I think that Jaden Reed is still going to be a better play. With Dotson, it's like we haven't seen him do anything yet with Philly. We haven't seen him do anything. So I just need to see it first. We're not at that threshold. I would play Jaden Reed for sure. Should I play Burrow or Daniels? Joe FNS. We're going to play Daniels for sure. Daniels' upside is just too high. And I honestly think the floor is, I mean, he's not bust-proof, but I think just based on the rushing upside, obviously the floor is higher this week than Burrow's because we haven't seen Burrow snap out of it yet. And I think Burrow's a decent play, but I would go with Daniels personally. Jameson or Zach Charbonnet? I would go with Sharb. Just based on workload. Because, again, like Jameson, he's going to play today. He was limited for a lot of the week with an ankle injury. So it's like, I don't trust the workload as is with Jameson Williams, and especially with an injury. I would go with the guy I believe will monopolize his backfield, which is Zach Charbonnet. Ladd or Marvin? I'd go with Marvin. Yeah, I would go with Marvin. Is Brandon Cooks a good flex play? I mean, I think he's fine. Especially if you're in like 14 team leagues or 16 team leagues. I think he's pretty good, but I wouldn't go out of my way to play him. Like, I'm not playing him. At this point, I'm playing Brian Thomas Jr. over Brandon Cooks. I would play Jameson over Brandon Cooks. I would play Jameson over Brandon Cooks. Adrian Hernandez, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start Seahawks or Colts defense. Start Dicker or Santos. I'm going Seahawks over the Colts because I just believe that the Patriots matchup is going to be fine. Like, the Patriots, I've been saying it all week, they're not some revelation. I'm confident they're not a revelation. It's not that I'm not confident. I'm confident they're not. a revelation. I think we'll see much worse weeks. And I think that the Seahawks defense proved me wrong last week. They're pretty good. So I would go with the Seahawks defense, and I would also go with Dicker over Santos this week, because I think that the good thing with Dicker this week at the kicker position is that Dicker is going to be on an offense they're going to lead the ball down the field so much. And I don't think that the Chargers offense is good enough to always punch it in. So I think there will be opportunities for Dicker to kick field goals, much like it was last week. Santos, the problem I have with him is this week, I struggle with the Bears. The only thing that I'm confident in is DJ Moore. Outside of that, I have no confidence. I mean, Keenan, we don't know if he's going to play. It's a game-time decision. Rome looks like he's trending to be a game-time decision. Swift had an embarrassing debut last week, and Caleb looked like a rookie last week. So against the Texans in Houston on Sunday night, I don't think Santos has as many opportunities as he did last week. So I would go with Dicker, and I would go with the Seahawks defense. And again, I appreciate the super chat. We're going to take a couple more questions, and then we're going to sign off for the day. Let's see what else we got. Jamison, McConkey, or London to start today? I'll still play London because I know that he's the wide receiver one. And I know Ladd's the wide receiver one too, for example. Like, it's not that necessarily. What it is for me is more so the matchup. For Drake London, they're going to get down in this game against the Eagles tomorrow, and they're going to be throwing the ball a bunch. Like last week, the one thing, I guess to extend an olive branch to Drake London truthers out there, because I've been hard on you guys, the olive branch I'll extend is that Drake London is, like last week, they were close in that matchup, so they could continue to run. And to be clear, one of the reasons I don't love London right now is because the reality is I think they will be run first. I think they will be for the majority of the year as long as Bijan's there. So I just think that this matchup uniquely positioned for London to be more involved than last week, because I think they're going to get down pretty early and they're going to have to throw. And therefore, London gets more involved because last week they didn't need to throw necessarily a bunch. They were within reach for most of the game against the Steelers. So I'll go with London this week over Jamison and McConkey. To the max, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Seahawks or Texans? Full PPR, need one. Wide receiver, one flex. Diggs, Neighbors, MHJ, Charbonnet, Robinson, thanks so much. Well, I appreciate you being here. I would say that the Seahawks defense I still prefer over the Texans, although the Texans have gone up for me this week with the wide receiver news with Chicago. They're not this high because I think that Seahawks are going to be a great play. I really do. I mean, the Patriots matchup, it's pretty good, man. It's pretty good. So I would still go with Seattle over the Texans. And full PPR, need a wide receiver, one flex. Diggs, Neighbors, MHJ. I'd go with Neighbors as your wide receiver because I think he's the best upside play of the bunch. I think, the problem with the Texans wide receivers is that last week is a good example of what's going to happen. I think Nico is pretty consistently the wide receiver one. Pretty consistently. He'll have some bad games here and there, but I think he's the most consistent of the bunch. He'll be the most consistent wide receiver of that bunch. And I think that Diggs and Dell are going to share and split what weeks they go off. It's going to be really hard to predict. But the problem with benching one of them is you're giving up upside. I think that I don't think I can give up the upside of Diggs. I would probably play Diggs as my flex over the bunch of them because Neighbors is the upside play. And I am definitely an upside swinger, so I like to go with Diggs over Marvin because Marvin I've been a little concerned about throughout the week because I think that what I saw from Marvin and his situation is that Kyler, this is the problem a lot of people have with Kyler Murray. He came out and he was asked about Marvin's light usage and he goes, yeah, sometimes he'll get the ball, sometimes he won't. It's not really my job. It's like, dude, I get it. Your offensive play caller calls the plays, but there's two problems with that for me. Number one, you're deflecting. You're the leader of the team. Act like it. Number two, you do have the power to give him the ball. Throw him the ball. He's your number one draft pick this year, and he's really good. So I'll go with Diggs, and I will go with Malik Neighbors. Because I think they have a combination of good upside and a pretty safe floor, I think, from Neighbors this week, actually. But again, I appreciate the super chat. We're going to take a couple more, and then we're going to sign off for the day. Make sure to check out that CeeDee Lamb line. If you haven't done it yet, you've got 15 minutes to take advantage of it. CeeDee Lamb's line on Underdog is half a yard. So hit the over. It's a free pick. Use the link in the description and use code FFN for the CeeDee Lamb pick. Jaden Reed or DJ Moore? I would go with DJ. I would go with DJ. Yeah, I would go with DJ. I think there's more, not necessarily more upside, but there's more safety. And probably about the equal amount, if not a little bit more upside than Jaden. Flex London or Pollard? I would go with London. Yeah, I'd go with London. Montgomery or Pollard? A lot of Pollard questions, interestingly enough. I'd go with Monty. Yeah, I think Montgomery's going to be a better play. Devonta Smith or Rashee Rice? This is a good question to end it on. Devonta Smith or Rashee Rice? That is the tester for me. That's a tester. Oh man, that's really tough, actually. Ooh. Man, if I was in that situation, would I play Smith or Rashee Rice? Tough, man, but I gotta tell you, I'm sticking with my gut. I'm playing Rashee Rice. I'm sticking with my gut. When I think about Devonta Smith and where he fits for me, I think we've reached kind of the area where I'm considering him. Let me look at my rankings just to kind of a glimpse really quick to see where I would fit him in. Devonta Smith is probably in the range of Mike Evans this week. I'd probably play him over Mike Evans. I think I would play him over Debo. That's where I'm at with Devonta. So yeah, that's I think where I'm at with Devonta Smith right now. But I gotta go with my gut, man. I think Rashee Rice can be a great play this week. That's gonna do it today, guys. Let's go ahead and watch some football. I appreciate y'all being in here. Make sure to like the video on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And take advantage of that CeeDee Lamb line on Underdog by using the link in the description. It helps support the channel a lot as well. If you do want to support me, if you support what I do, that's a massive way to support the channel, is to use that link, sign up for Underdog using code FFN, and taking advantage of that CeeDee Lamb line. So I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys on tonight's video, the waiver wire video. So stay tuned.